Fetch Me Pipe had been Pan's first mate, and in Peter's absence was the ranking leader of the Lost Forest. He was the kind of boy who could find all manner of trouble, even when he wasn't looking for it, though he generally was. Annabelle had met boys of this variety before, and had never been able to do the least useful thing with any of them. But rebel boys and indomitable girls had always been a combustible combination. Maybe it was Neverland's fault. Maybe in its unruly state of chaos, it had a mind to strike out of bounds at whatever and whoever. Maybe that was why Fetch caught a fever so hot he couldn't stand up without putting the room into a spin. The fever was bad enough for Fetch, who was knocked flat. It was worse for Annabelle, though, because it blasted a hole in her clandestine schedule. That said, she might have expected so little respect for timing, it being Neverland and all. What had the potentate given her? 9 days? 10? She counted the days she had left. It ought to be easy to keep track, but in Never, it shocked her how difficult keeping track of time could be. Had it been 3 days since she'd crashed into the lagoon? Whatever it was, she had a lot of work to do without having to flit all over the island in search of herbal cures for feverish boys on death's door. On the upside, Fetch's fever was good for interrogation. Annabelle touched Fetch's brow with the back of her hand. "You'll have to stay down, Fetch. You're fighting an infection." But he couldn't seem to understand and kept mumbling incoherent phrases. "Back, or I'll skewer you." "Who do you think you're fighting?" The sick boy blinked the glaze from his eyes. "I don't know." "Do you know who I am?" He blinked again. "Oh, it's you. You cured me." Annabelle started. "You must really be sick if you're giving me that much credit. Besides, you're not cured." "I'll be fine." Fetch tried to sit up and fell back again. "I can't die. Peter will kill me if I die. We had a deal." "A deal?" "Yeah, I promised to follow him." "Follow him where?" "To Smolder." "What Smolder?" "It's an island, a few miles off the coast. He told me to come after him if he didn't come back." "What's Peter doing on Smolder?" "Ah, dunno. Some kind of family trouble." Annabelle frowned. "I didn't think Peter had any family." Fetch started to speak, but the effort to answer was too much, and he sank into a deep sleep. A day and a night passed with little improvement. Most of the Lost Boys came and went, glancing in at Fetch and shrugging their shoulders. Numbers always fluctuated, and no one paid attention to who came and who went. Only Sammy sat by the bed like a devoted dog, rubbing his lucky rabbit's foot with curiously sharp toe claws. He peered at Annabelle and caught her gaze. "You won't let him die, will you, Miss Annabelle?" She glanced out the window at the afternoon sun and frowned. "I hope not." Then she surveyed the hideout for her apron. "We'll go foraging for an herb to see if it will heal the infection. Sammy, you can come along and help me find my way." She gestured to the oldest and, hopefully, most responsible of the boys. "Lawrence, make sure Fetch gets plenty of water. And don't on any account let the patient out of bed." Lawrence hopped up from his seat on the floor. "I say, I'm not a nurse." Annabelle blinked at the boy and saw at once he'd long lost all his roots to the human world. The same world of grim skies, dark shadows, and gnawing hunger that she still remembered all too well. She wondered how best to force a little stone-cold sobriety into him, or whether such a thing was too cruel for the boy. "Not a nurse, no, and especially not a qualified surgeon. You can't be, not until you've had some good practice with a needle and thread. There's my apron and pincushion, and a pair of torn breeches. Now you sit down on that stool and see to it." She paused. "On second thought, you'd better give me the scissors. Don't get any ideas about practicing on Fetch. We'll be back before dark." Stuffing her first aid kit into her satchel, she and Sammy set off. According to Sammy, pixie grass was a good remedy for infection. She wished she knew more about the pixies and their whereabouts. An expert guide was exactly the kind of help she needed right now. She frowned at Sammy. Annabelle remembered what the potentate had said about the changes in Never. One thing she discovered for certain: Never had a cruel streak. It teemed with unruly plants and insects that lashed and stung. She was all over welts from the whip vines, and if she stood still for more than a moment, green tendrils crept around and unfastened her bootlaces, or tied them together to trip her up. Progress was slow through the densest part of the jungle, and this was supposed to be the best path. At last, however, they approached the western cliffs of the island. Apparently, pixie grass grew in dry areas at high to mid-range elevation. Sammy, we've come a long way. Do you think we can find the pixie grass soon? I do, but I don't like going exactly where it grows. Why not? Pirates roosting in nearby caves. Annabelle's shoulders fell. Of course, there would be pirates. She sighed. Okay, tell me about them. Barry's lookout, and he can't count enough to give us an exact number. But this lot of pirates are smart, not like Hook and his crew. Course, smarts never bothered Peter, but now we're on our own. We've got to take care of ourselves. We don't dare fight 'em. What do you mean by smart? Annabelle asked. I mean, they've learned our secrets. Now she was getting somewhere. Secret collection was Annabelle's job. What secrets? They found our old hideout and our cache of pixie dust, always a step ahead of us. Now they chase us around the island like a pack of bloodhounds. That Red Jake is even meaner than Hook. Red Jake. Red Jake. I've heard of someone called Red Jake before. Who is this Red Jake? He's the captain, said Sammy. Annabelle's heart raced. Have you ever had a run-in with him? Not me. Peter fought him once, but he got away, and we were watching him. But he's a dodgy fellow. Why is the dust so rare? The pixie bushes have disappeared. With the pixies, we don't know why. If not why, then ask yourself when. When did the pixies disappear? Don't know. We don't reckon time in Never. How can I say? With pixies gone, the dust is like gold, but better. Hook's lot was silly over rubies and diamonds, but the dust, that's a real loot. These pirates know what's something and what's nothing. Pirates are pirates. Annabelle didn't doubt it. With his free hand, Sammy rubbed his rabbit's foot and grinned. I don't like to go there, but with your luck, the pirates will probably never even get a sniff at us. Annabelle tapped Sammy's shoulder. From the sound of them, I wouldn't like to pick a fight with these pirates even. No, not them, not this thought. Keep an eye sharp for signs of them, and let's be sure to give them a very wide berth, shall we? She whispered. Trust me, I know how to avoid them. Cutlasses in hand, they cut their way through the jungle undergrowth, finally breaking through to a footpath that led to the west. As they reached the top of the rise, Annabelle froze in the path. In front of them stood a rum-stinking, long-whiskered, sun-brown man with a red-tinted patch over one eye. Run! Shouted Sammy as he wheeled backward on the trail. Annabelle needed no further urging. She turned tail and dashed back down the path. The trail plunged steeply downhill, and she stretched her stride out long, half sprinting, half falling down the jungle path. Bare feet pounded the earth behind her, and not just one pair. Behind her rose a howl from many throats, long, loud, and feral. Sammy and Annabelle crashed through the undergrowth as they raced down the mountainside. Steps behind, the pirates' angry threats answered hot on their tails. Sammy belted to the right, and Annabelle to the left. The pirates couldn't follow both at once. Swift down the mountainside, feet burning beneath her, Annabelle raced through the growth. Climbing through vines, leaping streams, lungs gasping and heart pounding, she widened the distance, but kept her pursuers hanging on behind her. Eyes wide, marking terrain, she trailed the pirates through closer and closer growths. Then the path began climbing again, narrowing until it nearly disappeared. Annabelle snatched her cutlass from her belt and began cutting away. Her breath coming fast, heart pounding in her chest, she edged the pirates further. Though she could still hear them below her, would she ever find Sammy again? Would Fetch survive without the pixie grass? What were her assets? She quickly took inventory. Cutlass, magnifying glass, field guide, a little bit of gauze. Hardly much to work with. She thrust her cutlass across another vine, and as it fell apart, a thin vapor seeped from the sundered stem. Stinging her eyes, Annabelle covered her nose, lashing the foliage to get past the vapor. She realized, though, with a sudden yawn, that more than poisonous, the vine's vapor was enchanted. She rigged up a mask with a bit of the gauze from her pouch. Then she pressed through the growth, cutting another and yet another vine as she pressed up the mountainside. Soon the sound of coughing drifted up to where Annabelle sat, perched upon a large rock protruding out over the side of the mountain. From there, she watched as the pirates collapsed in a slumbering heap down below. When she was sure the vapor had dissipated and her pursuers still slept, she worked her way gingerly back down the trail, tiptoeing over the pirates as she passed. She counted them as she went. 9, 10, 11, 12. They didn't look so ferocious while harmlessly asleep, but she knew better. One of the pirates had a shock of long strawberry blonde hair and a red beard. This had to be Red Jake. Feeling bold, Annabelle stooped over him to peer at his face. The patch on his eye meant he would fight for keeps and sacrifice life and limb. These pirates didn't belong to fairyland lore, and their entries seemed to say that anything might happen. Something strung around Red Jake's neck glimmered in the light, and she looked closer. As she bent near, she gasped to see a medallion. It was exactly like the one her father had worn, made of gold and a topaz stone in the middle. It was more than a pretty ornament. In her father's hands, it had a magical charm. Annabelle's heart pounded in her ribs. She glanced at the pirates sleeping all around. Could she risk taking it? She inhaled a deep breath and reached out to touch the icy blue stone. The icy blue topaz. The pirate grunted aloud and she jumped, withdrawing her hand. It would be impossible to get the chain over his melon head. She'd have to break it, and that would wake anyone, even a drugged pirate. Her throat tightened and her breathing came fast. If she was going to get it, she had to pull very hard. Gently, she took the medallion in her fingers and turned it over in her hands. Before she could flinch, a hand shot up and gripped her wrist like a vice. Red Jake had her. She struggled against him, twisting and writhing, but he opened his mouth and he pulled her in close. His one eye remained shut, and Annabelle realized he had grabbed her reflexively while in his sleep. He moaned and muttered something low and hard to understand. But the end part Annabelle did understand. So what if I crossed you? I'm a pirate. We cheat. Annabelle wrenched her arm away, wheeled backward, and leapt over the last of the slumber, her heart racing and her lungs heaving, but she still had to get to the pixie grass. Soon the jungle vines gave way to rocky cliffs, and in the next moment the ocean appeared. Sammy's description had been faithful. A few moments of searching produced the thin sprigs of pixie grass with a tiny pink flower. She gathered an ample quantity from between the rocks, stuffed it into her satchel, then raced back toward the jungle trail. Oh, how she wished she could fly back to the easterly hideout with a little sprinkling of pixie dust. She had none, and there was nothing for it. On foot, she huffed and puffed all the way back down the mountain, thoughts racing in her head. Red Jake, Jacob Unwich. The same man her father had claimed had framed him. He'd disappeared, and now she knew where to. What was it that Red Jake meant? Who had he crossed? Many people, she supposed. But might he have meant her father? Did that mean her father was innocent? Nearly there, maybe a mile left before reaching the hideout. A rustling of growths alerted her to someone or something hiding nearby. She stopped up short, catching her breath in her throat. It was such a little movement, but she wasn't a fool to let a sneaking pirate catch her now. Gingerly, she retreated back, ducking behind broad-reaching leaves, and watched. Sammy dropped from a tree above. Annabelle released a breath and popped her head out from behind her hiding spot. Sammy leaped up, hugging her until her knees collapsed beneath her. You're safe! Bless me, how your luck holds up! Annabelle pushed him away. Don't I know you're just trying to sponge good fortune? This is no time to think of yourself. She climbed to her feet and opened her satchel for Sammy to peek inside. He blinked at the sprigs. That's the stuff, all right.